right, greetings. So, turn up the video speed. Yeah, I heard this guy make this statement earlier, and I thought, that's a good question. I think I'll just give my thoughts on that. Why is it a thing in the past that was so important? Why did it fade away? And why are people just anti intellectual these days? And I'm going to tell you the real answers to this, all the different phases. It's not that they're anti intellectual, it's that it doesn't really matter as much as it used to. It doesn't matter anymore. All right, where am I going with this? Freedom, Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And remember, turn up the video speed. If you go back in time and look at how hard life was way back in the day, like people working in coal mines, old songs like 16 tons, what do you get? Or Big John. It was a hard life. Life was hard. Life was really hard. And there was no bailout. I mean, you go even further back and you look at people dying in a potato famine, or some horrible thing happens in your country and you just got to leave. You just got to flee. There was no get a check and stay where you're at. Like poverty, part of the reason poverty is so bad in some places, which is a side video I should do, is because we subsidize people to where they never leave the places that have failed. People used to vote with their feet. Well, do we think your system here works good? Are there people still around? And if there's no money, go to a lot of Midwest towns. Kids are like, well, I can make this much money working in the city. Ironically, funny enough, you work in the city, then you got to pay the city cost. But yeah, places used to rise and fall. You know why there's ghost towns? Because whatever was going on there wasn't worth being around for. You know why they were there? Because there was something there that could get them rich. And most of the time, if you were rich, it meant you had an easier life. It also meant you got laid more. And this is one of the key factors to most things you see going on in society. Ladies kind of gravitate towards successful men that can give them a good life. Wow, that's such a shock, right? Yeah, so guys are like, what do I have to do to get the hot ladies? Back in the day, marriage. So you're going to choose one. You want the best you can get. And being rich, therefore, back in the day when they didn't just let everybody into college, you had to actually either be a wunderchild, prodigy, or you had to come from a good family. In some cases, there's a lot of places you couldn't go there unless they allowed you to be there. It wasn't like they were just giving it away like candy on Halloween. So it meant something. And then you also have the situations where back in the day, why was college so cheap? Because they didn't allow everybody to get a government loan. And we'll come into that a little later. It's ironic how they really screwed up the educational system. All for money. Boomers getting every last drop of blood out of everybody they could. But yeah, if you had a higher education, you were living a better life, and that meant chicks, women, better life, boats, life, things you want to do. The life other people dream about, you got it because you got that degree. Even if your degree was barely even relevant to your job, that culture of success. And this is why you'd see a lot of women, even though they were getting some flop of a degree, they were really there in college just to get, the pick a man, a good, suitable man for long-term family. I want a college educated man, regardless of whether the education was actually useful or not. But because people were willing to pay you more because not everybody had it, so supply and demand oversaturated these days of people with degrees, and a lot of these degrees are absolute garbage. Now, real degrees still have value, but even when there's a lot of real degrees and a lot of people have them, then they can afford to pay less because there's a lot of people that can do your job. I mean, it's like the thing, how many people can grab a shovel and dig a ditch? Okay. And then, well, if there's everybody can do that, it's not worth as much. And then we come along with automation. And these you see these days with AI, and they use AI for everything, basically, like programs that can do the work for you. It's not even necessarily AI. They just tack that in front of everything. But yeah, you got people being worked out of the market. So now people have degrees that aren't even really worth as much. So is being an intellectual really matter as much? Well, no. So let's go over some of the fundamental things that also changed in the culture that really affected people's fear of the future. Because for thousands of years, life was really hard, like starving to death, very, very real thing. People dying in childbirth, that was a real thing too. A lot of these problems have been completely alleviated. As I've often said, right after the military in America, the next big investment that you can really put into is farming. Your infrastructure, I say farming, but yeah, of course, your power, your water, all these systems, your roads. But if you don't have food, you have riots. And last time I checked, even though prices have gone up at the grocery store, if I think about how much effort I'd have to put in to grow that rice or grow those beans, I'm getting one hell of a deal buying it, especially if I go to the Dollar Tree. $1.25, there's 2 pounds of rice. It's a lot easier than working. I mean, and I can tell you, I've actually bummed change here and there over the years just because actually printers aren't pretty good at it. And I can sit there for an hour and get enough money to buy enough food for an entire week. Now, 1 hour equates into a week's worth of food. Thousands of years, how many hours did you have to give away toiling in the fields? Okay. We got it pretty goddamn good. But you go back and look at the times around, it was at World War One, World War Two, where a wife, a mother, husband's already died, and the kids were all sent off to war, and all the sons die. So her effective retirement, who's going to take care of the ma? Because now she's got nobody there. That's gone. So we start coming up with things like Social Security, and we make laws to where you can't send all the guys to war. So even if you get old and there's nobody around for you, you got this check coming in, so you'll be okay. Which it's good, but yet on the other hand, it also caused a lot of people to stop having the fear of the future. So fear of the future meant they probably would have either saved or invested or done something. They would have been minimalist. Instead, what happens is they just start pissing away money wholesale throughout their lives. The most valuable time they should have been investing was when they were young, so compound interest could work for them. But they don't do that because that was one part of the fear that was taken away. Now let's go to another program that took away a lot of the fear in the public over the years. Look, I'm not trying to trash on the poor here, but the welfare system, if we're being honest about it, back in the day, yeah, if you didn't, this is part of the reason your college was worth something, because that elevated you out of poverty. But let's just say that it's slowly but surely poverty isn't what it used to be. I mean, I got like probably anywhere from 5 to 6 friends back on the West Coast. They all faked crazy at one point or another, and they're getting a check and they're living all just fine. And we're not talking a lot of money. We're talking maybe 10,000, 12,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But they're living just fine. So do you think those guys that would have normally been doing, either aimed for a trade to have an easier job or worked some sort of job to pay their bills, they're not working at all? In the same way that a lot of the women, they're on the lower tier, they just crank out a kid and they're getting a paycheck from the government. They're getting a free apartment, free food, free heating, free this. Their motivation to be a greater person, the motivation, and by the way, this is actually one of the things that happens with the women. A really good guy that can actually take care of a family, a lot of women will look at that guy like he's lame. And the reason is that she's already got everything taken care of via the system. She doesn't want to have to deal and be with this man. In fact, if she gets with that man, here's what can actually happen. She's now above this income because of their family. So now she's stuck with this guy. As where what she has now, she can have one dude, that dude, this dude. She gets sick of a guy, it's her apartment. It's her benefits. So it actually is a demotivator for some of these young men to actually be greater guys, because the women that would have went after them, like they would have had, like, say 20 women going after them back in the day, or 100 women. Now they have a lesser pool of women, and the guys that are actually idiots and thugs that didn't have to put the work in. I don't care whether it's the trailer park or the ghetto. I'm not, no judgment there. Yeah, those guys are still getting laid. So why would you actually try if you don't have to? Now, this comes back to the whole concept of intellectual. There was some respect and a better life that came with actually being an intelligent, well-skilled person. And, and the term intellectual, I think, is vastly overused. A lot of times people are just skilled. A plumber is skilled, and they do a skill that the world needs. A programming coder is skilled. Does this make them an intellectual? I don't think so. They have a skill, but people kind of delude that. And that's where I want to get into the next part. Faux intellectualism that came out of the whole student loan system. You're like, what do you mean? I remember back when I was a kid, the boomers, the Gen Xers said, you got to go to college or you won't make any money. You'll live a miserable life. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. The greatest generation said it too, because back when they grew up, you really did matter. And then the boomers, it actually mattered too, to some degree. But the Gen Xers, they started seeing a little bit different because a lot of more people were going to college. But even back in the Gen Xers, they were just giving away student loans like Halloween candy. No. That all changed. And so you had regular average people going to college. And because there was all this government money pumped into this system, the system just started upping prices. And people that should have been kicked out of the institutions, the higher education institutions, higher skill education. Is that really higher education? Nothing is what doesn't matter until you can use it for something. Just being honest. If you can't use it, it's kind of useless. But yeah, they start pumping all this money in, so you got like faux degrees, and then you have situations where the institutions, and much like people talk about the military industrial complex, the educational industrial complex, and I've had people point this out. Remember, Asmundel was talking about this on a video. He referred to the educational system to somewhat degree of a grooming system. Like when you're a kid, they tell you, you got to go to college, you got to go to, they're constantly telling you this. And so this is like, people get it really grounded in their head, and then they go to college and they get a useless degree. And then this is the other part that I think it's insidious. Like you need this many credits for your degree. You already have everything you need to know about your degree, but you don't get that slip of paper unless you get this many credits. So what people end up doing is taking all these useless courses, quick credits, just so they can get their damn degree and get out of there and just tell the college professor. So you have regular kids that go into this system trying to get a real degree, and they come out of there kind of brainwashed, skulls full of mush, completely brainwashed to basically like, oh my God, the system, the patriarchy. It's like useless crap. And then what about the people who get philosophy degrees? And, I would say that a therapy degree, is useless, but as screwed up as people are these days, it's probably a golden ticket. I'm just saying. Everybody, it's funny. So you have a degree where you talk to people. You get paid to sit there for an hour and talk to people. I got to give you credit. That's what people used to do as a normal thing, or talk to their priest or talk to their family members. Nobody wants to hear about your problems, first and foremost. Let's be honest about this. Do you pay somebody to listen to your problems and then go, tell me more? Oh, do you think it might have something to do with this? It's total bullshit. But I'm saying because people are so screwed up, you can make money on that. But yeah, flooded the world with useless degrees. And let's say you got a really good degree. Well, now that there's 10 times or 20 times as many people out there that have the same degree, now your degree is worth a lot less than it used to be. You know why? Because everybody got to go to college. So now you're paying more for the college, and then you can't get rid of the debt under the system. So you basically owe the government all this money, which is fair. You took out a loan. You can pay your damn money back to the people you borrowed. If you borrowed from the people, you can pay the people back. And mind you, you also have all these people who have skulls full of mush about how to manage their money. I mean, my God, could we spend? I rag on the college education system and the K through 12 education system. But before you get out of high school, you should really know how to do minimalism and how to understand how to invest in compound interest. I think this is pretty goddamn important, because I think if most people knew, like if they could get people past the whole mentality of I gotta have the car, the clothes, and all this crap, because that's a lot of the reason people do it. And why? Coming back to sex, it's because it's you get laid. And people are like, oh, you can't really render it down to that. Oh, I can render it down to that. I will render it down to that. Because once people started getting by just fine without having a higher education or even a job, you watched how quickly being intelligent, highly educated really mattered to people. It never mattered to people. And so I don't think we can go back necessarily totally. But one thing we could do is maybe stop giving people a free ride, like the welfare. I think Social Security is just a Ponzi scheme, so I definitely want to get rid of that. Rob the future people so you can pay for the current people, and take your good dollars today and give you horrifically inflated dollars in the future. Oh, we'll give you a check. It just won't buy you anything. I think it's a bad system. And that safety and security that people feel deludes them into pissing away their money and their years of life of working. It's great for GDP, by the way. Just like, divorce is great for GDP. Then we get to the college system. Well, there's no reason people can't be educated, but why not at home? If you're educated at home, you have this situation where, instead of paying, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for your degree, you could learn from home, anywhere, anytime. You could be van lifing it and getting your education. Yeah, that sounds good. And some things you're going to have to go into the physical building and do. If you're learning welding, you're going to have to physically do it. But imagine all these other things and get rid of all, like you can still have these educations. Like for instance, you want to learn state history, American history, or world history, or some other things. You could literally have that anywhere, anytime. You could have a program on a cell phone. You could literally just listen to the book itself on your earbuds while walking your dog. And then you could go later and take a test on it. If you want, maybe it's like, well, why would people do that? Well, maybe before you can take money like a loan from the government or any sort of thing, we have to see that you have, I don't know. So I don't want to say, I hate the term social credit score. I hate it because it's got a bad thing to it. But like, what have you contributed to society? What have you done for society? Maybe we could have something like that, where like, well, you seem like you're actually a little more well put together than the average person. So like, bonus points that get you a better deal. And as far as the whole intellectualism being out of favor, if you want it to come back, make it sexy. Make it sexy to where, and you're not going to convince women to bang nerds. I'm sorry. When women, okay, like let's be real, not to be cold, but when women can go out and have their lives taken care of, whether it's welfare or some simp paying their bills, they're going to bang Chad and Tyrone. But if Chad and Tyrone realize the real way to be getting the bitches is to have that degree in physics, and women are like, oh, Chad and Tyrone have the physics degree. They have the money. They're the answer to the money, the power, the everything. When that becomes the way that you can get your penis wet, you're going to see a lot more people aiming for that. They're going to respect that a lot more. And that's the truth of it. I mean, and just maybe as a side thought, look at like broken cultures. Like I sometimes look at like rap music as like a psyop to some degree. Like, hey, you're telling people to shoot people, do all this crap. It's just bad messaging. But still, if that guy's got the money, the cars, the fun, and getting laid, people are going to emulate that. So people emulate whatever gets them the ladies and gets them the easier life. Whether that's being a drug dealer or being a physicist. You just got to aim people towards physicists and demotivate. Like you gotta make it to where being that other thing means you're poor, you're broke. And yeah, you want people to respect the intellectuals again. You make people make it sexy, make it the way to the sexy time. But yeah, that's kind of a long deep dive. That's my thoughts on it. The motivations, all of it. This is Freedom Phil. Always turn up the video speed, like, subscribe. Feel free to share it if you want. Take it easy.